dailyfaceoff.com, and our insider, Frank Seravalli. Hello, Frankie boy.
How was your birthday?
Pretty quiet. I had a daughter and a wife that were out of town. I had an oldest son who was out of town. So yeah, I was just kind of went and had a steak.
Yeah.
On Friday night, had a steak. And then
that is what the geriatrics do these days.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Steak and some cream spinach, and what a night.
Yeah. Then swung by the old Canadian Tire to grab some things on the way home, and then
in bed by 7:45.
I'm gonna go to bingo, but I was tired.
Yeah, something like that.
Thanks for your contributions on Friday, Frank.
Yes, thank you, Frank. Very nice.
Quite a collection.
The Gruden one was so good.
So good.
I got this thing. Makes me feel nice.
This isn't all up there in Calgary, Canada.
On the sports in there, Calgary, Canada. You soup and buns.
I'm hearing buns.
That doesn't make me feel very nicey.
I've been talking to Pinder here.
Yeah, me and Pinder. My old pal Pinder. If you weren't paying attention over the course of the weekend, the St. Louis Blues fired a coach and hired a coach. And what we've learned is the Boston Bruins, they have things that are coveted by other teams, as this is I believe the third coach now who was fired by the Bruins and then hired less than 2 weeks later by some other team.
Crazy.
Who may or may not have had a coach at the time. They just decided, he's a pretty good coach. What do you again, since we've talked, the firing has happened. It's Joe Saquon on an interim basis, and now the St. Louis Blues have Montgomery behind their bench. Thoughts on both?
Well, for one, look, there's obviously a huge amount of trust that existed between Doug Armstrong and Jim Montgomery from his time just a few years ago as an associate coach. So last week mentioned on our pod that, if you were to list off a bunch of places that might be willing to consider firing their coach to hire Jim Montgomery, St. Louis was definitely on that list. It was St. Louis, Anaheim, Detroit, all teams that have lots of ways to go in terms of where they're heading. And I think that relationship kind of puts it over the top. You don't have to guess. It's not like, hey, what would this be like if we brought in this guy? He was already on our bench and worked in our organization. I talked to a couple players there that played for Montgomery, a few years ago as an assistant or associate, and they said everyone loved him. So I think that part stands out. The commitment also that St. Louis was willing to make, 5-year deal, is rather extraordinary in these times, given that, a guy just a couple years into his tenure now will stretch you into the top 10 and longest tenured coaches. Look, Drew Bannister, he got 22 games full time as a non-interim head coach in the NHL. These guys it's the not here for long league. And beyond that, when you look at Montgomery, his track record, I think the only thing I'm left with is asking, it's great that you made the decision to hire him and bring him in, but what are your honest and realistic expectations for this team in this current competitive cycle? Do you think that this is a playoff team that has underachieved, or do you think that this is a team that has just had some poor coaching contribute to where they are right now?
Or is it just one of those moves you make regardless? If you know that this is an upgrade, whatever you think of,
this is a top 5 coach in the league. I got to go get him.
Berube, I guess, wore out that happens, and then they moved to Bannister, and they're not feeling it. And I think it was it Bushnevich or somebody who was kind of sniping. Not sniping, but I mean, it was kind of veiled shots at the coach.
Our breakout was bad, and we changed our breakout, and we played better.
Yeah,
basically is exactly what he said.
Yeah. So I wonder, when you look around and you aren't sold on your coach, whether you're a cup contender this year or the year after, like you say, it's a 5-year deal. So, I mean, that's clearly what they wanted the guy. It's what they were prepared to do.
Or maybe Montgomery had leverage.
Probably.
Sounds like a lot, Frank.
Yeah.
5 years.
So the other thing I really liked about it was that Doug Armstrong didn't pull any punches. It was not like, well, he just said, we had a better coach available to us and we decided to do it. Like, no offense, Drew Bannister, but please, sir, step aside.
Yeah.
The real guy's here.
Yeah. Honesty, which probably is tough for Bannister to hear, but I think it is the case for sure.
I mean, think about the way that he's built this team, though. Like, this summer, You see two guys that are RFAs being jammed up by their team, trying to get wedged into the salary cap and whatever remaining dollars the Edmonton Oilers have left. And Doug Armstrong says, yeah, I'll offer sheet two guys from the same team at the same exact time. If you want loyalty, get a dog. I mean, that's really the thought process. Drew Bannister, is awesome having you here, but sorry, we got something better.
Well, he always felt like
the ruthless way that he's done it is the way I think so many more teams in the NHL should. That's how they should operate. What are we playing nice in the sandbox for?
Yeah, agreed.
Bannister's still going to get his money. So, yeah.
And he wasn't highly paid to begin with, and the fact that after being an interim, he only got a 2-year deal at the offset of this in the summer told you that he wasn't really that convinced that this was the guy anyway.
Yeah. It felt like a placeholder, and he has been.
Sorry, Ryan. Any idea what the salary is for Montgomery there?
Don't
5
know.
times.
It's probably expensive.
Yeah.
That 4 to 6 range seemed reasonable for a coach of his ilk. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a big gap. It's $2 million, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Seems to be the rate.
My guess is Bannister was in the 1 point something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
The Flames are in Ottawa tonight to open up a 4-game road trip. We were just kind of looking at some numbers. The Ottawa Senators are the Ottawa Senators. The Senators of old are the Senators of today. They don't start great. They don't rebound. They don't make the playoffs. They got young talent. They draft high. They make maybe some questionable moves. Fire a coach, bring in a coach, fire a coach. I would think for the fans, they got to be sick to death of it. I wonder about the new owner and what his appetite is there. What's your, I guess, just kind of a blanket kind of commentary on the state of the Senators?
It's tough to watch because I think they are a different, but in a lot of ways worse off scenario than the Buffalo Sabres, for instance. At least with the Sabres, you can point to it and say, well, they're the youngest team in the league statistically.
Right.
When you look at some of these guys on the Sens, not only are they a little bit older, a touch older, they also have like mega long-term deals attached to almost all of them. So, one of the names that popped up in conversation around the league over the weekend was, hey, the Sens are potentially willing to explore making some changes, and Josh Norris's name has popped up in conversation. Okay. 5 years left at 7.95 with a massive injury history, having missed 100+ games with the same shoulder injury. I get the idea of wanting to move a core piece, but it almost feels like if that truly is all that the Sens are willing to consider at this exact moment in time, which I don't know that to be fact, but that seemed to be the sense from some teams that I believe have been in dialogue with them. Is that an authentic shakeup? Is there real value in Josh Norris? Are people clamoring to get their hands on him?
They're going to ask you to eat some of that money probably, right? Like it's going to be one of those things where it's like, okay, you can make the deal. You're probably not better for it.
So are you just moving the chairs around?
It feels like it.
So look, I think the Sens had been in evaluation mode for a while, and Steve Stais came in with new owner Michael Andlauer. They had a ton of success together in the OHL, but now it kind of feels like not all that different than some of the other teams that they're stuck in the same rut with. How do we break out of this? To continue to do the same thing year after year and smash your head against the cinder block wall trying to break through, it doesn't feel like it's working. You're not winning with these guys. What's the need to hold them so tight as a security blanket?
And it's interesting because I just wonder, as a head coach, if you're a coach that's out of work or just in the league, when I look at Josh Norris and Pinto and all of that, but I still feel like between some young talent on the back end, they're obviously trying to do what they can in net, and I don't know that is working for them. I think there'd be a lot of coaches that would be like, I'd love to work with that. It's young still, even though the guys that are younger now, 25, 26, they're aging every year. They're a year older. I don't know if
right. That's how that works.
But I feel like a coach would look at that and say, I would love to have that kind of potential skill, ability on my team to try and craft, but no one's been able to do it. We were kind of going at the coach. What did you make of the coaching hire in Ottawa?
I don't think the coach is the problem. When you have the same results with the same core through multiple different regimes now, to me, it's on the core. It's no longer on the coach. And you can say what you want about Travis Green. I went to Ottawa for training camp. He mentioned that not only did he share some of that same excitement that you're talking about, but one of the first things that he learned about that group when he went there was just how willing they were to learn and do it differently, that they took ownership and responsibility for some of the issues that they had in the past and were willing to try and do it differently. I'm not seeing anything different. I'm seeing the same similar mistakes being made by the same players time after time. And now what's really tough to figure out is look at Linus Ullmark. Like, to me, I thought we'd have a tremendous study this year in one of the true things that I think analytics has really struggled to define, which is what is the impact of team structure on an individual goalie and their metrics.
Yeah.
And then you look at this year and you say, okay, Linus Ullmark, 247 games played in the NHL with a .917 save percentage for his career. He goes to Ottawa, plays 13 games, and he's .881. Okay, so you might think, okay, shitty team structure in front of him. Isn't that what we're seeing now that's contributing to Linus Ullmark's numbers? And then you actually dive in, and again, some things under dispute or not, but you look at the metrics and it says that the Ottawa Senators are 4th in the league in expected goals against, meaning they're actually supposedly defending pretty well. And now it's actually on the guy that's supposed to be making saves that just isn't. 17 goals against in his last 4 games and some really ugly ones. So are the Senators actually different and are just getting bad goaltending? Or is this more of the same?
Well, Forsberg's got better numbers behind the same team. Swayman also is off to a rough start. So I just don't know what it's changed, right? So in Boston, I knew my defenseman was going to take this side here. And like, I don't want to make excuse for these guys, but I don't know. Like, I don't think they're that good defensively.
I don't either. I just don't think they're that good in general. I just don't think they're deep enough.
Boy, and you just think, I think about you, Retro. It's the things that you can control. Effort, block some shots. Let's give a crap. There's enough skill there on the back end. There's guys in that back end that you'd move your franchise for. I mean, it should
or
be.
are we overestimating it? Because I'm guessing none of us are sitting down and watching.
I was going to say,
on a regular basis. Right?
Well, it's the same thing probably with Buffalo, though. Like, are these guys really? Do we fall in love with?
Honestly, Buffalo might have turned the corner here. They just went 3 in a row in California without Tage Thompson. No.
Yeah, no. So but that's not the point I was making. It's not, is Buffalo in or out? My point is, do teams fall in love and just overvalue the pieces that they have? Maybe they're just not that good.
I would think that that's happened a fair bit. From right now, just sitting and thoughts on it, they've overpaid these kids too soon without having them earned results, right? Like Jeff Sanderson is a good friend of mine, played with him in Buffalo. Like, his kid got paid, what is he getting? Almost 8 a year?
He got more than 8.
And he hadn't played 100 games in the league.
Yeah. He got $60-some million.
Like, and I get it, because it's
great
Canada,
for Jake,
and they don't want these guys to walk. And it's like they did the same thing with Kachuk. They did it with Stützle. Like, it's kind of this Edmonton thing we saw for decades.
Yes.
They're so worried about guys leaving, they pay them too soon, and then it's like, well, where's the hunger?
Right. Well, I think that's a fair question to ask. But then at the same time, if you're actually in the chair and building a team, not only are you worried about them walking, but you've also just guaranteed a really great cap number for your team.
Sure.
Moving forward. Like, where's the balance there? I think on paper, it's 100% the smart business play from both a team building perspective and also a cap perspective. But I don't know the proper balance.
What about Buffalo? Has anyone paid attention? I was just, as you were talking, looked at the standings and was shocked to see them in a playoff spot.
In that tough division, they're 3rd.
Yeah, but the way that division works, you could go from 3rd to 8th in 1 week.
No, for sure. But listen, we know Boston just made a change. We'll see what they look like under a new coach. There's clearly, a want to be better. Tampa has been pretty mediocre after a hot start. Like, for Buffalo to get into that division would be a significant achievement. I understand it's tight, but they're there. They've done what Montreal hasn't, what Detroit hasn't, what Ottawa hasn't, in the sense that they're hanging. at the quarter pole.
I picked the Sabres to make the playoffs this year. One team I didn't pick to make the playoffs this year
Ottawa.
that I'm getting real closer to
Calgary.
making a
Calgary
declaration is the Calgary Flames.
You liking
Playing
what
well.
you see, Frankie boy?
I am.
You
I
get
think it's a
confidence?
totally different vibe around this team. Just speaking to people that are in and around there on a daily basis, they said on a night to night, just being around the locker room and hearing those guys talk and how excited they are after games, it's night and day different from the last couple of years. And beyond that, they seem to have been linked up on this us against everyone else mentality that, look, I think is really powerful. You can say what you want, but there's plenty of examples around the league in recent years of teams that have overachieved based on a belief that they have in themselves and the rest of the group. I know I've seen all the numbers. I realize it's been like 17 games without scoring more than 3 in regulation.
Jeez.
Some might look at that and say, hey, this is a team that is achieving unsustainable results. I would actually look at the inverse in that and say it's probably just really unlucky that they've gone that long without scoring more than 3, and that will change in relatively short order.
It also tells you they're getting goaltending and good team defense, right, Frank? That's an area that I think we had a lot of questions about. We all hoped Dustin Wolf could be a future star for this team, but what you've seen from him and Vladar and the decor in front of them has been much more structured than what we're used to seeing.
And look, we're at the point in the season now where you begin to, like, the first couple weeks are a fluke, right? And, you know, any team can go 5-0-1 to start. And the real question is what happens when you get punched in the face? And I know we've heard that a lot over the last few weeks with Mike Tyson, but the Flames, they got punched in the face and had a reckoning in relatively short order of how quickly that rebound and they became a 500 team. The response since then has been the most impressive part. And you have, you know, a game like Minnesota over the weekend, one of the best teams in the West to this point in the year. They don't blink. They find a way to continue to scratch and claw. And that scrappiness, I think, is going to really serve them well. I really do.
I love that we don't have to hear how close they are. They don't have to come out and tell us that they're a real good group. We really like each other. We're like,
I yawn every time I hear that.
Yeah.
If you have to tell people, it's probably not true. The real
It's
tight
just
group,
like the same couple that continues to post on Instagram how much they love each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I mean, because we do it every day, and you feel like if you jump in on it, it's November. You guys, you're all. But like you say, that it feels like there's some things, and the power play has not been good. It's gotten a little bit better. So you wonder, well, if the goaltending goes down a little bit, well, what if the scoring goes up just a little bit? And if maybe, you know, the defensive play goes down a bit, what if the special teams improves just a little bit? Because there's room for both of those to improve. But it does have the feel, like you say, Rhett, we're all these guys, they care for each other. It's a great room. They got a great room. It feels like for the first time in a long time, I would buy it if guys are saying, yeah, guys, we have a great time, we hang out, it's a great room.
Yeah,
I can
and 2
watch
years
and
ago,
tell.
it was one of the
you
worst
feel
groups.
like that's legit, right?
Like we watched this group under Daryl with he wouldn't name a captain, and it felt like there were factions and guys did not want to go to the rink. It was storm clouds the moment they got out of their car in the parking lot. 2 years later, it's night and day. Is that Huska? Is it Connie? Is it the leadership group? What do you attribute that to, Frank?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think the biggest thing is they cleaned out the room of players that don't want to be here. I think it's another reason why look at a team like Columbus this summer and the changes that Don Waddell made. If you don't want to be a Blue Jacket, we'll do whatever we need to get rid of you. Doesn't matter. Hey, Patrick Laine, we will get nothing back for you. Quite literally nothing. And we will pay a second round pick to move on from you. Jeez. Because we want players who want to be here. That's what the Flames, I mean, look how many guys are gone that could have stayed, could have signed long-term, guys that they offered to. Yeah. There was constant drama, constant noise. And now it's like, hey, it's all good. If Calgary's not your flavor of the week, we'll find guys that want to be here.
I had something dawned on me last week. And
wow, alert the media.
Oh, well, trust me, I made a big deal of it on the show. When is Conroy going to go and just completely change lanes and go after guys now. Now he's adding to this team. We've got so much confidence in the group. We're going to bring. We got to score. We need one more scorer, and we are home ice through the playoffs.
I don't think he's thinking that way at all. But he is.
What?
He is trying to add.
Oh.
He is. Look, the right shot center is no surprise. I think I talked about that week 2 of the season. They're looking, but they want to find someone that fits their age scheme and is part of this next iteration, somewhere in between 22 and 25 years old that can be here for a long time. So that's what they're looking for. They're looking for more scoring punch. I can tell you they're actively engaging in conversation to try and find these guys. And whether or not that materializes, like, they've got the assets, the picks and prospects to be able to make something happen should something like that surface. The problem is those are exactly the type of guys that most teams are trying to keep.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I want to bring a name up here. I mean, what's going on with Trevor Zegras? Where's the market at? Will Pat Verbeek make a trade that he doesn't like, or will he just sit on an asset until it turns to dust, like he's kind of done with John Gibson here? Like, what's happening with the Ducks? Where are they at with Zegras?
The Ducks are a mess, and I don't know what's happening there. I tend to think that the way that Trevor Zegras' stock has plummeted around the league, I mean, watch his play, watch his body language, look at his production. It's been a grind, and not just for him. It's been a grind for a lot of their young guys that have been in similar spots. So when will that alarm bell go off? When will changes be made? I think before anything, you'd probably have to start with the coach, because, you know, I've been on record for 6 weeks, even going back to late last season, talking about how difficult the environment has been with Greg Cronin there on these players. Look, I think that's the easiest place to start. Make a coaching change, see if you can get everyone to rebound instead of trading guys where their stock is at the absolute lowest that it's been. You're better off hanging on to the asset, because history would show that, you know, it should and could or will get better. But look at how this has worked with John Gibson. This is going back 2 regimes now. Yep. Bob Murray, you know, there was some talk, hey, John Gibson could be moving on. Then they said, well, we want significant value. We're not eating any part of his contract, and we want big pieces in return. Then this continues to drag on and on. Now suddenly Lucas Dostal has grabbed the net. It's been 3-4 years now since this last popped up in conversation. And yet here he is at a point where not only will the Ducks have to eat salary in order to make something happen, but they're also unlikely to get much, because his play has devolved to the point where the question is, and we just had Carter Hutton on our Daily Faceoff Live a half hour ago, is John Gibson a starter in today's NHL? His answer is no.
Yeah, I don't think so. 5 years has been brutal. He was a very good player before that. He'd been your Team USA starter 5 years ago. Not anymore. He's not on that team.
Going back to exactly what we just talked about with the Flames, John Gibson has shown that he does not want to be there anymore.
Right.
I don't care what you need to do to move on from John Gibson. Again, I don't care if we're not getting anything and we're paying something. We've got a ton of picks and prospects. What's one more pick? Move on.
You mentioned the body language on Zegras. There was a goal, and I saw it on social media. I meant to grab it, not that we were going to necessarily talk to him, but I just wanted to keep it. He scores a goal, and I don't know if it was necessarily that pretty or not, but he just kind of goes to the corner and stops, and a couple of guys come in. There is no elation.
There's no joy.
There's no joy. It was just kind of maybe it was kind of like maybe that gets.
Well, he's got 2,
right? It's
boy.
This is a guy who was a mid-60s point player as a
like
19 and 20-year-old. And then not only that, the creativity everywhere.
Well, you got to have some
ice.
passion for the game a little bit. And if it's gone, how, like,
well, when it gets sucked out of you from your GM, who demands that you go to Florida to train in the off season, and to the point where the team gets fined $50,000 for it. Did you hear about that?
no.
Just
That was
did.
a couple years ago. Maybe 18 months ago, they were fined $50,000 by the league. They forced their young players to go to Florida for a set number of, not days, weeks, to train under the Pat Verbeek approved person in Florida.
so
Then Then your coach, your GM hires a coach who basically has made it his point to berate every individual on that team. Where do you find the joy? Where does that come from? It's starting at the very top and it's filtering its way through every facet of your operation.
And that's just it. Once I don't know the GM well enough to give an opinion, but if the fun's out of it, it doesn't matter if you're in sunny California making millions of dollars and your coach is making life miserable at the rink, you're not going to perform. Do I love how Trevor Zegras plays a game of hockey? I've not watched him enough. I like the talent, but the rumors have always been, well, he's very talented, but he doesn't play hockey to help the team win. He's just, but when you put a guy like,
tell me, let me.
I know I'm going to answer you. I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to say it's that's what I'm getting to. In the right circumstance, that creativity is supported and
encouraged,
embraced. And the group understands that that's what he brings.
Yeah.
That's what he brings to the – I tell it all the time. David Strush, a good friend of mine, and I hate to take a shot at him, he was coaching Bedard in Regina. And I called him. I said, Strushy, what's this kid like? Like, is it worth the hype? He's like, he's unbelievable. Unbelievable retro. But I got to get him to play both ends of the ice.
Like, yeah, but the one end he's otherworldly. Maybe just leave him
like
that end.
You know, it just is a little story, but Zegras to me would do the same thing. It's like you're not putting him out there down up a goal with a minute left. It's not his spot.
When are we going to harness what these guys do really well, as opposed to worrying about what they don't do well? If they don't do that well, get someone else on your team that can do that for them.
Yes.
Why is Matvei Michkov? And maybe a bad example, but your team is in like 23rd place in the league. And he's the guy that, first off, people are paying to see, and he's got jam and he's super creative, a really good player. Why is he sitting out for 2 games as a healthy scratch? Because you don't like the way that he plays defensively at even strength.
What is your message to send, and why can't you send it without sitting at that guy? Yeah. Like your team's not good enough that you can go, I'm going to bring you out because we're winning games. I'm going to send a message so you can watch how we need you to play. You bring it up, and I've not spent time breaking down Anaheim, but if what you're saying is right and the coach is a dick and the GM's trying to be a hard ass, too much.
Their team slogan should just be, we're not happy until you're unhappy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the way it's been.
We need to stop when morale improves.
We need Boomer is what
lunch today has been canceled due to a lack of hustle.
And here's the thing. There's a lot of shine coming off the Stevie Y era in Detroit. His legacy as a GM. You see Julien Brisebois doing great work after he leaves in Tampa. Verbeek was an understudy. He is an absolute Yzerman disciple. Like, where are we at on these two? Because it sounds like they're not really interested in other people's opinions, and they make life miserable for people underneath them.
You could buy into your persona too much, I think, and feel like
where you just start believing all your own bullshit.
Exactly. I'm a hard ass. That's what I'm regarded as. You know what? Again, hate Daryl Sutter would play up to the "I'm an asshole" mantra to the point of failure for, you know what I mean? Like, and you can overplay that hand. Guys don't want to go to the rink and not have fun.
Yeah.
It just don't. And you can't change that. And
look at the power of it. Look at the power of, like, not for nothing, but to bring this conversation full circle. Does anyone think that the Flames are in the top 16 in terms of talent and depth?
No.
Not one person, even like objectively their own front office, would tell you the same. Yet when you look at the enjoyment factor that team has and the way that they've bounced back, you can't tell me that it doesn't mean something and that they're not going to outkick their coverage based on the way that they enjoy coming to the rink. Versus if you actually put it on paper, you could make the argument that Anaheim has more pieces and definitely more young pieces up front that are way more intriguing.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even put those two teams in the same conversation with where they're at right now this season.
You just wonder, being preemptively sour and miserable for fear that the players are going to take a free ride, as opposed to maybe be fair and have some good time. And then then reel them in, then give them shit if they deserve it or if they need it, but keep the mood relatively pleasant if possible. It just doesn't seem like it's that crazy.
And that doesn't let players off the hook for coasting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can walk and chew gum and probably dribble a basketball. Like, you can do more than one thing at a time.
It's interesting though, because I hadn't really thought about the other part of this, which is, so if that is really what your game plan is to just pump things up and make everyone feel good, why aren't other teams doing that?
Well, they kind of are. Like, John Cooper is that guy, isn't he? He's the guy you'd pick over.
I think it's not a pump guys up. It's a accountability. I always go back to Brian Skrudland. He was my captain in Florida. Did anyone work harder than Brian Skrudland? He was the least talented player I maybe ever played with. He couldn't skate. He didn't have a shot. And he was the captain of most teams he played on. Why? Because he worked his ass off. But he didn't refer to work as punishment. I'm going to work my ass off and we're going to enjoy it and see what happens. And so it's not, I think in Ottawa, they've given away the farm and they don't have enough accountability. In Anaheim, they're too hard on these guys and they don't enjoy playing going to the rink. Find the balance. Have a little honesty, have a little effort, have a little integrity. Do what you're supposed to do, demand the effort, and hold, as a coach and GM, you hold them accountable. And you don't it's not a handout.
I don't think anyone looks at Ryan Huska and says, "Oh, there you go. There's a soft coach who just lets everyone get away with everything."
This is how we do things. If you're not going to do it, well, then you don't play. Zari's sad. The guys have been benched, right?
Kuzmenko, Miramanov,
at times.
But the next day, you don't come in and berate them in front of the group. You didn't play good yesterday. You sat. Today's a new day. Let's go
to work.
Come on.
Yeah. And there's probably been some coaches who are very fair and try and promote a friendly environment who just don't have good hockey teams or bad goaltending and then get let go. Because I'm thinking about, prior to Daryl, you needed to make a coaching change. Because he was too nice or whatever. I wasn't hard enough on the player. You need a red ass. You need a guy that's hard on the players. Or they just needed better goaltending, needed to play better, weren't good enough. I don't know.
There's accountability to the player too. And I'll just use Zegras because we've talked about him. If he's a putz and a bad teammate, that changes things too, right? Like if he's a bad teammate, there's teams that have. I don't know that Lindholm and Zadorov and all the guys that were wanted out of Calgary were bad teammates. But like we just said, if you have guys that don't want to be there or they are a bad teammate, it's a cancer in the room. You got to get rid of it.
But and going back to the Flames, that's why I thought it was so critically important that as soon as that crappy leaked Zadorov trade request came out when they were in Toronto last year, the fact that Craig Conroy acted quickly and was like, "Hey, you're out of here."
They probably could have got more, but it wasn't worth the room, right? It wasn't worth to make that third rounder 2 years sooner. Wasn't worth letting that poison stay in the well for another 2 months.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he gets enough credit for that because guess what? He was getting hammered in your market for a while saying, look at these individual trade returns. Not great. Well, I don't know. I look at the totality and I stressed it then. I look at the totality of it. I go, looks pretty good to me.
How's Saquon Barkley working out for the Birds?
Oh boy.
Pretty
good.
If you like MVPs, well, if that's an award you can buy into.
How about the Giants though? What do you think they feel like
so
today?
Smug, Frank.
Someone said last night as he ran for that final 70-yard touchdown that put him over 250 yards on the game, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the Giants management office tomorrow.
Yeah.
$112 million guaranteed to Daniel Jones, who has a tearful press conference and then walks in the next morning and says, you know what? I'd like to be released.
Yeah.
They weren't going to play.
Oh, sure. Hey, we'll make that happen for you. No problem. Like, what? We just gave you $92 million just this past summer. Shut up and sit down. Like,
But they didn't want him around either. Yeah.
No, but they're playing him on scout team safety. They weren't playing him at quarterback. He was going to rot and be embarrassed the rest of it. That doesn't do any good for anyone. Out of spite, you keep him around, Frank? Come on.
I don't know.
It's
You
okay.
just look like the most soft organization ever. Yeah, we'll just hand you a pile of money. And you said you wanted to release now. Oh, no problem. All good. I know that sounds totally counterintuitive based on the conversation we just had.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm sorry. Like, you can't be making decisions like that and then not have consequences as a front office, particularly in letting Saquon Barkley go.
But how do these things happen? I still laugh. NFL stuff is funny to me because it's such a cash cow and the biggest thing in the world, well, at least in North America, as far as sports is concerned. And they just shit the bed over and over and make stupid. And it's like, how are you fooling people with?
Yeah. How is your key fob still letting you in the building?
You know what's amazing about the NFL though is just how quickly you can turn it around.
Yeah.
You can quite literally go from god-awful team to knocking on the door of the playoffs in one offseason. New coaches, new draft picks.
But isn't that because of, sorry, I was talking about a guy you probably got to go. Now we're talking about fun stuff. It has to be part of it's because you're drafting guys that are stepping in next year, right? Like the fact that the NHL draft you can make some good picks, but it is a coin flip. If you put that draft
worse
2 years later, right?
Do you, Rhett? So let me ask you this as an NHL draft pick. What percentage of NHL draft picks actually end up playing one game in the NHL?
Overall, 5%?
It's higher than that.
I'd
19.
Okay.
19.
81% of guys that are drafted never play a game.
Jeez.
And I wonder if you take
And
the
I'll
first
say
round
this.
out.
Well, and if you get drafted, they're trying to give you a game.
Right. They
Oh,
want it to
100%. They're doing
Yeah.
everything they can to get you a game. So let's spin this a different way. Of the top, like, let's call them the core players on each team. So top 6 forwards, top 4 defensemen, and starting goalie. What percentage of those guys do you think are drafted by the team?
their own team that has the rights?
Yeah.
30.
Yeah.
12.
Oh my God.
No.
12%. That's why rebuilds take 8 years.
So what you're saying is Bobrovsky, Reinhart, Bennett, those guys, Forsling, Kachuk,
they were all drafted elsewhere.
And yet we're going to turn around to the point we just had about Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit, Anaheim, all these teams that drafted their guys and are like, oh my God, we're going to keep them forever. Maybe you shouldn't.
Have a great week, Frank. Appreciate you as always, pal.
Bye, Frank.
See you guys.
There you go. Frank Seravalli joining us on the Insider Hotline, a presentation of Crystal Waters Plumbing and Heating.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.